one stacker on a journey to find silver. International Stacker.
Hey everybody, International Stacker here. Thank you for coming to my channel. Welcome. And I want to please remind you to please like, comment, and subscribe. YouTube does not necessarily like gold, silver preparedness channels, so help me fight back on the censorship and gently tap that like button. Like 80-90% of you watching are not subscribed, so please subscribe. And right before we get in the video, I want to say a big thank you to the sponsor of this video, Uranium Energy Corp, who we will talk about later. But ladies and gentlemen, I have something that I've been watching for a while now. As you all know, if you watch my channel, I've got a ton of silver, not really a ton, but over 6,000 ounces. I've got 15 or 18 ounces of gold. So that's nearly $200,000 in equity at this point, and boy, oh boy, does it weigh a lot. So I've got a good base. I've got a good foundation for my dynastic wealth, you know, to really build my future and dynasty for myself and future generations. But I'm looking for other opportunities to maximize, okay? I don't see gold and silver as an investment per se. I think we're at a unique time in history where it's going to have unique and epic returns. But that's not the primary reason I'm in it. The primary reason I'm in it is because I believe it's anti-inflationary. It's a hedge against inflation. It's a good place to park your value, your blood, sweat, and tears, the minutes, hours, and seconds you work in your life to protect it. And I did want to note at this time that I'm not a financial advisor. Please read my disclaimer in the description below. Your choices are yours and yours alone. But I have been looking at other opportunities. You've seen some of my videos. I've been covering mining stocks for silver and gold. Looked a little into materials for electric vehicles with, you know, Elon Musk going YOLO with Tesla, with SpaceX, with all the other types of vehicles, etc., that are coming to market. And I can tell you that many, many years ago when this all started, green energy was a fringe market. Now, I'm going to talk about green energy. I'm going to talk about the administration. I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. That doesn't mean I'm pro that. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm against that. I'm simply analyzing what's occurring in our society and looking for opportunities that I can maximize and make some moolah, some money, some cash, some fiat currency, whatever you want to call it, and share that adventure with you. But what I can tell you is governments around the world are increasingly incentivizing green initiatives. The primary objectives of these initiatives include avoiding the use of fossil fuels and finding viable, cleaner alternatives to avoid polluting the planet beyond its current state. So if you've heard Green New Deal and all that madness and wanting to like rebuild all the buildings in the US, if all these different, the Paris Climate Accord, all these different things are initiatives to try to push more towards what people call quote unquote greener technology and away from those that heavily pollute. We're not going to get into the mining for materials for electric vehicles, etc., and how much that pollutes, because I find that dichotomy interesting. But moving on, governments are seeking a way, they're actively seeking a way to reduce fuel dependency while also promoting economic and job development, okay? And many people that are pushing this are pushing on under the auspice of taking care of the world, taking care of the community, and ultimately saving lives. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that one way or another. I'm just saying that's what folks are pushing. I can tell you, however, there is a global race, apparently, from what leaders say, to zero emissions and carbon neutrality. And it's heating up around the world, pun not intended. So, for instance, in 2020, September of 2020, President Xi Jinping announced to the UN General Assembly that China would strive to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The country would adopt more vigorous policies and measures to peak emissions before 2030, he added. Now, China's historically one of the worst polluters in the world. So we'll see if that actually happens. Denmark set out plans in 2018 to build a climate neutral society by 2050. Its package includes a ban on sales of new gasoline and diesel cars by 2030 and support for electric vehicles. I think the U.S., president or somebody said that cars after 2030 or 2040 had to be electric. I don't remember. The European Commission is working towards a multinational 2050 net zero emissions target under their Green Deal, and it has been endorsed by the European Council of National Leaders. Not going to get into the EU, but the thing I find crazy is all these countries elect leaders to lead them in their country, and the EU is run by a bunch of folks who are not elected, they're appointed, and they put in policies, rules, laws, mandates for all the EU. So essentially, they're usurping the authority of those who've been voted in by the populace. So I'm not going to go down to that rabbit hole. Also, French lawmakers voted a 2050 net zero target into law on the same day as the UK Parliament passed a similar 2050 target amendment. Japan promulgated its 2050 net zero target in law in May 2021. Japan is the world's 5th largest emitter of carbon in terms of coal. It relies on coal for a third of its electricity generation, but it's obviously that's going to have to change if they want to hit their goal. Germany established its 2045 net zero target in law in June of 2021, after talking about climate change and what's happening in the world. The Canadian Senate adopted the Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act in June 2021, making Canada's 2050 net zero target official. In the U.S., President Biden ran on the climate platform, which I'm sure you're all aware of, whether you agree with it or not. It happened. And to aim for net zero emissions by 2050, Biden promised a $2 trillion bill, or a quote-unquote clean energy revolution, and 100% of electricity by 2035. The proposed $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan promises, according to the Biden administration, of course, to make quote-unquote transformational and historic investments in clean transportation infrastructure, clean power infrastructure, remediation of legacy pollution, and resilience to the changing climate. Virtually every developed nation has some sort of climate change initiative in the works. We just went through a handful. There's many more. And the Biden administration has made it crystal clear that it is pro-nuclear in terms of energy and its carbon neutral vision. There's no other way you could do it without nuclear, and I'm going to get to that in a second here. Biden also promised to continue to leverage the carbon pollution-free energy provided by existing sources like nuclear to support the creation of advanced nuclear reactors and to support advanced nuclear and rapidly commercialize it, ensuring that those new technologies are made in America. That's something I do agree on. I believe it's important to make things in America, get our factories back. We saw with the beer flu. I don't want to say COVID-19. I probably just got banned. But we saw with that how fragile our supply chain is, the just-in-time system is, and the car market and where they don't have chips and different things. It shows why it's important for us to make things back here in the United States so we can be reliant on ourselves and more resilient in those regards. I'll say this, in light of everything that's going on, there are a lot of big money investors that are jumping headfirst into what's called the ESG trade. You're going to see this around. ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. As a matter of fact, BlackRock's head of iShares America, Armando Sinra, expects that ESG investments could become $1 trillion category by 2030. Let me show you this right here. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. This is a chart for ESGs showing from 1995 to 2020. So look at ESGs are in blue. Look at the growth in ESGs. It's gone parabolic since 2012. So what does this show? This just shows that a lot of money is getting into the ESG trade. What does that mean? That means there's a lot of interest, a lot of belief, and a lot of big money's moving into there. So I like to watch what the big entities are doing, right? Not what they're saying, but what they're doing. Now, here's something that's very important to know. 1 kilogram of natural uranium will yield about 20,000 times as much energy as the same amount of coal. So if you have 1 kilogram of coal versus a kilogram of uranium, 20,000 times. 20,000 times. And you can leverage the uranium in a much cleaner fashion as long as you don't have a nuclear meltdown. Hashtag Chernobyl. Hashtag what was it? 3 Mile Island. So that's why it's important to advance the technology and make it safer. But that being said, that shows that natural uranium is much more highly efficient, portable, and something that can really shape the future of the world. Commercial nuclear power plants have supplied around 20% of the nation's electricity each year since 1990. I'm currently living in the state of Illinois, and I believe there's 5 or 6 nuclear power plants in this state. I think it's the state with the most. I can tell you this, in my opinion, the ultimate way to capitalize on this trend is by looking into exposure into uranium energy. For that, there's companies like Uranium Energy Corp that I've had the executive vice president on in the past, Scott Melby, and I'm going to drop a few snippets throughout this video of some important things I think you need to hear, especially if you missed that video.
You're following certainly understands supply and demand fundamentals for various commodities. And I think uranium is probably at a point in the cycle that we haven't seen in many, many years. And that's after a long bear market following the events of Fukushima, but we've largely climbed out of that from a demand side and a supply side.
And the reason why Uranium Energy Corp stuck out to me is they've done something remarkable, and they've actually purchased the physical uranium. They're actually stacking uranium in order to have the supply ready when the time comes to sell the inventory. To me, as long as you have enough place to store it and enough capital to execute this and do the long-term hold, it is a brilliant idea, and in my mind equates to what we do as stackers, right? They're basically stacking uranium for when the time comes they can sell it off, and that's kind of what I've done with my gold and silver. Now, ultimately, my plan is to keep it to retirement, but if any time before then gold or silver shoot the moon or whatever happens, they go set up a tent on the moon next to Dogecoin. Just kidding. I don't think Dogecoin is literally going to go to the moon, because Elon Musk is naming a rocket ship and sending it there. But I don't anyways, let me not go down that rabbit hole. I don't think Dogecoin is going to the moon. But they're literally stacking up the uranium like you and I stack gold and silver, and like other mining companies do, and hoarding their production through a bear market and trying to hold to sell it at higher prices. So as long as they've got the know-how, the places to store it, and the money to do that, I think it is a brilliant idea. Uranium Energy Corp, they actually own the physical supply, and also owns 14 million shares of the only uranium royalty company in the world. It owns and is developing the newest and largest ISR production area in the U.S. at Burke Hollow in South Texas. Who's been to Texas? I love Texas. And has Spencer Abraham, who is the former energy secretary on its board of directors. That's epic. I'm kind of curious in your assets and your stakeholders. I think you said you had 17. What was that? You had 17?
15 different 15. Royalties in the portfolio. So
okay.
Those would be in the United States, Canada, those 2 world-class assets that we just acquired in northern Saskatchewan. We've got other assets, longer dated assets in Canada that will be big future mines. They may not cash flow as immediate term as Cigar Lake and MacArthur River. The mine in Namibia, which is quite an early mover in that regard. And so again, we're quite proud of the portfolio for a young company, but we're very actively really looking at every potential mine around the world, and including some of those byproduct opportunities that you raised, whether it's nickel, cobalt. We might be able to provide financing to extract the uranium and take 100% of the uranium offtake, which would be a great fit for our company. So again, if you want exposure to diversified uranium mines around the world, URC is not a bad way to get that. If your viewers have seen and followed the uranium sector over the last year, we've seen an incredible appreciation of all the uranium stocks, whether it's the mining companies, the physical inventory companies, or royalty and streaming companies like ours. We've seen incredible investor appetite from the ESG, the health, safety, environment kind of aspects of mining and ethical investing coming into mining. almost a realization in recent years that nuclear does fit that clean, green energy criteria. We've always known it was baseload power, no carbon emissions, no air pollution, which, I mean, in China, you're probably not fretting about climate change or carbon emissions as much as you are just breathing clean air. And nuclear addresses both of those. So it really is getting greater acceptance amongst politicians, environmentalists, investment community. The Biden administration is a great example. I just had the opportunity to testify before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee on Thursday of last week on a nuclear energy panel. And, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that would have been an opportunity for anti-nuclear senators to just jump on the soapbox and really come after nuclear energy. We had none of that. And if there were senators we thought might have leaned towards anti-nuclear, they didn't express it in that hearing. And in fact, some Democratic senators, like the chairman, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, actually came out strongly in support of and basically pointed out the obvious, that renewables, there's nothing wrong with renewables. They play a role, but we have to recognize they have really big limitations, such as their intermittent power. They run 25 to 30% of the time at best. That would be the best wind farm in, say, Iowa or southern Minnesota.
Right.
We've got to do something about the other 75%. Now, previous administration filled that gap with coal, gas, oil, and other means. But if that's being de-emphasized in this administration, there's really no choice but to go with nuclear.
So, I mean, as you can see, the modern world needs nuclear power and energy that will make it possible to support the ever-growing population of the Earth. The population is growing exponentially, and I do believe we are going to need to think smarter and harder to meet that rising demand. Okay, I think uranium is highly viable alternative source of energy. In terms of pollution, it's much less impact than fossil fuels, as long as you don't have a nuclear meltdown, like petroleum or coal. So nuclear energy, to me, is a vital component of the world's energy ecosystem at this time, and I think it will become more and more important as we move into the future. And most people aren't even aware of how vital nuclear energy is in their daily lives. So nuclear energy currently provides about 10% of the world's electricity from about 440 reactors. Think about that. 10% of power from only 440 reactors around the world. Do you know how many coal and oil plants there are around the world to do the other 90%? Thousands. Around 50 reactors worldwide are under construction as we speak. It's a long process. 12 countries produced at least 25% of their electricity from nuclear power in 2019. In France, one of the biggest screamers about, well, we need to be clean, this and that, they have 75% of their electricity from nuclear power. And going here, this is capacity factor by energy source in 2019. Nuclear, natural gas, coal, hydro, wind, solar. Solar technology has a long way to go before it's extremely viable. It's the photovoltaic technology now. It needs to be enhanced, and it is being enhanced. And there's been big jumps in that, but they're not efficient. They lose a high percentage. I don't know the number now, but like back in the day, they only caught like 10% of the solar energy, right? I don't know what it's at now. It's probably much better, but still inefficient. Wind, a lot of issues with wind. It's ugly. People don't like it. It kills birds. Chops their little heads off, but they've done about 34. So that's at 34%. So on and so forth. You can see here the capacity factor of nuclear, which could really revolutionize the world. And again, folks, I really encourage you to visit uraniumenergy.com. Check them out. In full transparency, I'm not an investor yet, but I'm looking heavily at it. This is the second time I have covered this company. You can see they've got projects everywhere, which I think is good. Not all the eggs are in one basket. They have information for investors. They have analytics. They have highlights, etc. So make sure to check them out. Encourage you to do your due diligence. Get out there, open some books, read for yourselves. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm simply sharing my adventures and what I've learned with you and what I've gained around the world. And you can see here, very active in terms of what's going on. So they put their fiscal report June 9th. Let's see what's going on here. April 30th, 2021, the company held 123 mil in cash, equity, and physical holdings of 47.9 million in cash. Okay, uranium inventory is 26.2, 14 million shares with a market value of 49. Oh, that's for the 14 million shares. That's epic. Okay, so here's a chart. Their signal or their ticker is UEC on the New York Stock Exchange. And you could see they're in a little tick up right now. It's only $2.39 a share. That's epic. Man, they were sub a dollar. They're 50 cents in March of 2020. Dang it. Well, here's a previous high where it dipped. So, gosh dang it. What did I buy back here? Okay. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked the video. Again, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for joining me on my adventure. I do videos literally around the world buying gold and silver. I've streamed from the back of camels. I've in Egypt at the Great Pyramid. I've streamed from the Nile River. I've streamed from a hot air balloon over the dead Valley of the Kings. Like, I've done stuff all over the world, and you've came on these adventures with me. I've got nearly 1,000 videos uploaded for you to watch. Anything you could think of. Buying gold and silver in the Saudi Arabian gold souk, in the Dubai gold market, Europe, Ireland, full stacks, like whatever you could think of, I've got it. So please check out my other videos, and thank you again for the silver luster. Oh, LFL. Thank you again for joining me on my journey. And I guess I'll say, catch you on the next one. Woo!
One stacker on a journey.